and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and we are in Socrates and Jesus, a Dialogue in Heaven, because of course we are. Where else would we be? This book is super awesome and cool. Amazing. This book is amazing, and I hope you are enjoying it as much as I am. My goodness, what a gift from perhaps the greatest mind since Socrates. And well, if we can make the case that, and we have been, that Socrates, well, that's not fair. I was going to say Socrates made some missteps. He didn't write down his thoughts, leaving it to people who were not as intelligent and capable as he was to share his teachings with the world. Specifically what was said in the book last time, or recently, people who have not themselves been able to endure the brilliant light of being, and therefore they have the task to write about something that they haven't experienced or can't experience with enough depth and frequency to really understand it. And of course, that is intelligence. So people who aren't as intelligent is another way of saying people who can't participate in intelligence itself. It's one of those things that we were looking at last time. You go from one example to many examples to all, or a principle. For example, you see one intelligent person, you see two or more intelligent people, and you realize that intelligence can't be in that specific person. It has to be something universal or a principle of reality that they must be participating in. Same sort of thing that we do for beauty and justice, which is the transition that we've got in the book from Socrates' teacher, Diotima, the lady, that talks about going from one example of beauty at different levels to two examples, to realizing that the principle is universal. And of course, that allows you to transition from beauty of bodies to beauty of souls to beauty of minds, and so on. There are steps. We're not going to go through it now, but it's in the book. And it's in the symposium. So, if people unable to share in intelligence itself, or being, or pure mind, or ousia, were left to write for Socrates, Pierre Grimes hasn't made that mistake. He's written this book, and we get to read it ourselves. Also, there can be a case made that Pierre Grimes has not only rediscovered what Socrates himself gained through the benefit of teachers in a culture, but he added to the tradition. There are a few things that Pierre Grimes has added to the tradition, one of which is understanding the role random thoughts play in conjunction with our dreams. So, of course, we didn't get a lot of dream analysis from Socrates because we killed him before he was able to, again, write things down. But Pierre Grimes added the understanding of how there is a coordinate, compatible, complementary relationship between the random thoughts, or the thoughts that you get during your day, your waking hours, and the thoughts you get at night in your dreams. They play different roles, but they work together. So, if that's the case, then we could say that perhaps Pierre Grimes was a mind greater than even Socrates. Isn't that interesting? I think it's interesting, and he wrote a book, and we get to read it. Oh my God, so lucky are we. That didn't make sense, but you get it. So, what? Why are we talking about how great Pierre Grimes is? I forgot. I just woke up. I need to have some coffee. So, Last time we've been collecting together what we've been reading in this specific section to find the puzzle. That's how we read. Look for the puzzles. And then you collect the terms from the text to solve the puzzle. Why was I talking about diagrams a minute ago? Now I'm puzzled. The book that bangs the most? A great mind? I don't know. Anyway, collect the terms from the book, not from your own beliefs, to answer those questions. And last time we looked at how specifically we do that. Analogy. We think through analogy. Analogy finds relationships between terms on one level and applies the same relationships to different terms. That's also how we move upwardly, because as we master our relationship with ourself through the logos, the dialectic, how do we talk with ourselves? How do we understand ourselves? How do we support and care for ourselves? How do we read? How do we share what we've seen with other people over coffee? We are ourselves becoming like the intelligibility or the logos of the higher dimensions. We are becoming more good and rational. So those relationships that we are developing within this level will allow us to be open to transitioning to a higher dimension. That's spiritual growth, a higher state of being, higher cognitive functions, and maybe even higher dimensions of reality. By being like them. Not by paying a subscription fee, not by sitting under a waterfall for 10 years in meditation, not because you've been going to the ashram for 40 years, nothing like that. It's just through likeness. There are no subscription fees, or you don't have to be a member of this or that group. In fact, what we've been seeing is this or that group that excludes people is the nature of human problems. Belief and clan identity in principle excludes. In principle will create conflict. In principle cannot unite humanity. It cannot unite our soul. So we are looking for a new way of being that still has divisions. We're not all equal. Some people have been playing the game for longer, or have been applying themselves with greater integrity and courage to mastering the logos, to putting into action what we've been learning. So there are divisions, but there's no exclusions. That's the way of being we're after. The way of being we call philodianoia, love of understanding. Because in our development of our love of understanding, we can get better at the skill of dialectic. And in applying it, we are becoming more like the logos, because the dialectic is the use of, or the skill of, or the structure of the logos, allowing for our developments. And people who progress can turn around and help others. And being able to recognize different levels of development is necessary for the use of the dialectic. Just as a doctor doesn't pretend everyone is of equal healthiness, he has to recognize what level of sickness are you, what stage through the cancer are you at, what stage through your chemotherapy are you at, or whatever, and use his skill and art to benefit you based on where you're at. So, a new way of being that allows for divisions and progressions, and allowing us to judge accurately and respond beneficially, while also never excluding everyone. You don't have to be born a Jew, or raised a Mormon, or baptized into Catholicism. Therefore, an end to division and conflict and suffering as a result. What's the difference? Philodianoia. What's the cause of problems? Belief. Why? Because belief, as we've been learning through understanding, is in principle a cognitive function which is based on lies and conflict, and manifests as sadism and murder. Or various levels leading up to murder depending on where you're at. Maybe just excluding, maybe mocking, maybe chastising, maybe ganging up, maybe exile, and eventually, genocides and murders and all of that kind of stuff that we are seeing in our world as a necessary implication of, or necessary consequence of, belief-based cognitive function, giving us the stakes or the necessary conditions for us waking up and realizing we better get our ass into gear and learn about some dianoia. Learn philodianoia and be it, incorporate it into your way of being, share it with others. That's the new way of being we've been learning. Now, last time we have been exploring that analogy, or how to go through analogy so we can put out the pieces together. So it's not, we're not reading for reading's sake, we're reading that also is a win because it's fun and it's awesome and it's an interesting book. We like the book anyway, but how's my lighting? Not so great. Yeah, maybe if I do this. Maybe if I... That better? I'll go with this. So, this information that we're getting from the book, the move from belief into understanding, or we just talked about as a new way of being, or purification of what's false, perfection of what's true, we can apply to all of the different sets given to us in the book. Individuals, you are a person in a lifetime. What is your job to purify and your job to perfect? What about your soul? If your soul is going through reincarnation, experiencing the implications of not doing this, and instead becoming identified with an image of the self based on a belief and not developing an understanding of the self, then if this self-image is a fundamental cause for what lifetime you reincarnate into, is your soul bound by a mask? And if there are many reincarnations, is your soul's journey to experience or purify all of the possible masks that you can identify with as a self that blocks you from the true understanding and knowing of their actual self? Equally so, mankind. If these masks come from beliefs, clan-based beliefs, be they Abrahamic with the Jews, the Muzzies, and the Christies, Judaism, Muslim, Islam, and Christianity, or any religion. There are millions of people that said, well, I want my opinions to be pushed in there, I'm starting my own cult. Or just family beliefs, German beliefs that led to Nazism, Russian cultural beliefs that leads to Putin, American false beliefs that lead to Trump, etc., etc. Could mankind's purpose or excellence be to address every single kind of clan belief that we can experience that leads to our ignorance and suffering? So that's for you to do. Use the text to take what you've learned and apply it to these different sets. That's analogy. And of course, using the clues from the text. Collect the terms from the text. Jesus mentioned talking about his job was to remove people's allegiance to tribal gods and instead help people develop a god that was a metaphorical, not literal. That's barbarism, taking these stories literally like a baby, like a mosh brain, a a God that we create that personifies the principle of developing understanding to know the self. Equally so, society's laws in mankind can be set up to protect false beliefs or what? That's for you to do. So applying these two principles to each of these levels, in each of these examples, aligning them, filling in the gaps, that's the fun. This is the Sherlock Holmes part of the game. You read to collect the puzzles, to find the crime that Moriarty did, and then you collect the clues, and then you go back to Baker Street, and then you play with the analogies, collect the terms, arrange them, order them. If after you've ordered them, you notice that there are some gaps, fill in the gaps. If there are any principles like purification and perfection, apply them to each. Can you even extend? Are there any terms that you could add to the analogy? So as a king is to his subjects, so too a shepherd is to his sheep. Lots of S's in there. But you could also say, a king also has a chariot. It also has royal guards. So expand or extend the analogy that allows you to ask the question, what's the equivalent of a chariot for a shepherd? What's the equivalent of royal guard for a shepherd? And then after you do that, you can push the implications. How does that relate back to what's meaningful? What are the meaningful questions that I've been carrying? What's the purpose of life? What am I here for? How do I be happy? How do I make sure my incarnations are good? If mankind is to do this, what will be the result? What will we be like? What happens to mankind after we've done all this? What happens to my soul after I've done all this? What happens in my individual life right here after I've done this? Push the implications. And then as you go through that and you apply it and you test it and you gain benefit from having gone through this, becoming like the higher dimensions, being open to higher states of being, reflect on the process you're going through. What does that mean? Is this not just something that benefits me, but could benefit another person? Share it with your friend. Help them to go through the same process of playing with analogy to develop your mind and your soul and our species. And then reflect on that process and realize again, maybe it doesn't apply to just me or many. Maybe what we're going through in the use of analogy and this kind of reading to benefit our soul is something that applies to all people, from one to many to all. Now we're at the level of principles and causes. And then you can reflect on, what does that mean? What does it mean to live in a universe where these universal principles exist that can either benefit everyone by playing in it, or if you're blind to the fact that you're in an analogy anyway, you are just carrying a false belief that you have yet to reflect on from childhood, causing your childhood past and your problems of the past to be reflected into your present, causing your fate or negative future, your suffering and disasters and even negative incarnations. Because that's the nature of human problems. We're still playing analogy, you're just doing it blindly. Our job is to take the wheel and drive. So what does it mean that we have these principles of analogy allowing us to, through developed likeness, to become more intelligible and being able to care for people, so more caring and rational ourselves, becoming more like those higher levels of reality which are themselves good and rational, by using different terms and same relationships, which is similar to the unfolding of the self into all these dimensions that we are in, that we are progressing through as a soul, which uses the same terms but different relationships. For instance, belief, same terms, whole, part, same, different, but they are a different relationship because believers are in conflict between those two. And that conflict internally manifests as the suffering we see in our race. Same terms, but understanding is, as we've just been saying, a intelligent and caring, a providential, a rational and beneficial relationship from the whole to the part, from same to different. And all the other same terms that we've been developing in the set of terms we call the selfers, self-logos terms. So that's the unfolding and the return. And we are becoming like the higher levels. And today we are probably, I'm guessing, I read the first couple of paragraphs, well, skimmed it. I don't like to pre-read. But this idea of asking the questions, what does it mean that this is a principle that extends to all? That this idea of the logos and analogy that we master through the dialectic, because, hey, this use of analogies you can share with other people, and you can ask them questions to help them through it in conversation. And you might even be able to see the dialectic structure in these, which leads to the fact that there probably is a missing eighth term because the dialectic is 2 sets of 4. So now that we've arranged this, you can fill in the gap by applying the principle of the dialectic to it to extend the terms. Are we missing one? So, what does it mean about our soul and reality that we have this inbuilt thinking mechanism that functions through analogy that we can practice and master, that allows for our development? But if we ignore it, neglect it, or settle for normalcy and mediocrity, we will become unjust, hurt our souls, function in a negative way, and have a terrible reincarnation, suffering the consequences. In other words, we have within soul and reality these certain principles and preconditions allowing for either our excellence or, if we ignore our purpose, ignorance, suffering, disaster. Because it's the same thing applied to what's false. In other words, you are, whether you wake up to the fact that we're all here to master the dialectic and integrate it, so you are a walking dialectic, whether or not you realize it, you're still a walking dialectic. The only problem is you aren't becoming like the one self or the good self, becoming like mind and able to participate in intelligence through understanding of the dialectic. You are identifying with a false image of self from your childhood that your soul was drawn to because of its negative self-identification in previous lives. So your whole life is a playing out of the implications of this mask. And you're not using understanding, you're using beliefs and opinions. You're not participating in actual intelligence and care, because belief can't actually help people. You need understanding to help people, but belief is in opposition to understanding, so you can hurt people. Sadism. You're not participating in intelligence and care, you are participating in injustice and sadism, which is the confusion of hurting people, crushing people, shooting people down, mocking people, murdering people, genociding people, sending people to Alligator Alcatraz, genociding people in Palestine, because that's what it means to be knowing for believers, because they can't actually participate in mind. So you will spend your life being sadistic to others or yourself, whether you like it or not, engaging in beliefs and opinions to solidify an identification with the self, with a false image of self or the mask. In other words, you are still doing the dialectic, you are still playing with analogies, but you're taking the analogy of your past to your present, causing your projections. You are still doing the dialectic, you are just doing it to a false image of the self. In other words, what are the conditions and causes needed for both problems and excellence? The only difference is whether or not we wake up to it and we say, okay, I've understood this, I've read this book, well, I'm reading this book and I'm having fun reading it, and it seems like the greatest mind since, or greater even than Socrates, is giving us these puzzles, not for us to believe, but us to understand are rational and always true. I don't quite understand it yet, because that's my job, but we've got enough good reason to apply it, test it, take the risk, have some courage, and go through the work of developing understanding and purifying our false beliefs and seeking excellence. Just as people are attracted to excellence of sports and musicians and athletes want excellence in their life, we can ask the question, what's the cause of excellence? Is there a principle or precondition for excellence that allows this athlete and this athlete to have it, this musician and this artist and this athlete? So within the same field and in different fields. What's that principle of excellence? It has to be something rational that we can participate in. That's the logos. The logos. What's participating in it, and what gets awakened to our soul's desire for excellence when we come across it? That's the self. What's the highest kind of excellence? Is it scoring the most 3-pointers? Or playing the hardest rocking song? Or would it be the highest use that the self can have of the excellence of the logos be what we're doing here, the dialectic? That which helps all beings and establishes the principles for all excellence. Dialectic. The skill and principles and structure of solving all problems and developing all excellence. That's the thing. Why do we have this? Is the self the logos and the dialectic? We could also add another term, mind, because it's through mind that self can participate in the excellence of the logos being the dialectic. What does it say about reality that self, mind, logos, and dialectic exists? And what does it say about our soul's relationship to it, that we can either develop excellence by mastering those, or if we stay asleep in our zombie virus of our pathologos, that those same principles or conditions are going to play out to our injustice, our false idea of the self, our sadistic idea of knowledge, our anti-logos, our hatred of reason and understanding and conversation to silence the logos. The fascists always come after the thinkers. The use of opinions and debate instead of dialectic, to solidify our ignorance, our harm, and our false idea of the self. The same conditions, either you're doing it in this way or you're doing it in this way. All we're doing here in this channel is sharing this idea with people so that you can reclaim your mind from the zombie virus and do what you're specifically born to do. And we talked about last time that happens through analogy and reading and sharing your insights through the dialectic. Hooray, it's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
And get rid of it. So, that's where we are. Let's jump in. So let's jump back a little bit so we see, remind ourselves of the some key terms. Doing this makes you a true hero or a philosophical hero. Like a Prometheus. What did Prometheus do? Stole the dialectic and fire from the gods to give us the ability to save our race. The dialectic, Prometheus. Jesus talked about putting an end to people being bound by tribal gods to escape from those fetters and instead create a god that personifies, again, it's not literal, it's no sky daddy with a beard. That's bullshit propaganda. A God that personifies the quest to know thyself and to return to the source that is the true goal of intelligible life. And that's what we've been talking about here with the idea that the two fundamental things that exist, things and relationships, terms and relationships. Whoops. And from a source that we call the self, or the one self, or the good self, from that source, it's the same terms of the logos that are expressed in different relationships to create the different levels of reality and the different cognitive functions that that self can experience in those levels of reality. But analogy uses different terms with the same relationships. So again, this is just primary units. This is why I love this so much. Like, when you want to understand something, this is the way I think. I've always thought this way. When you want to understand something, go back to the beginning. Start from stage one. A single term, self. Necessarily, there has to be the self as the single term, because what's the agent? It's also the most personal. You are a self. You don't have to believe you have a self. It's the most fundamental. But for there to be an unfolding, there have to be at least two things. So we have that list of pairs, wholes and parts, same and different. Also, we have two things in reality, things and relationships between things. So if you match these up, like a fundament, for there to be creation, there has to be something different from the self. So already you give birth to the ideas of same and different. You could even make the case that this is the first kind of creation, or it's necessary for creation. The first kind of unfolding. So, same things, different relationships. The primary principle of likeness that allows for whole and parts to be experienced in different ways in different dimensions, and to be experienced within in different cognitive functions. Believers are in conflict. They are apart. I'm a Jew. I'm a Christian. I'm a MAGA. I'm a Nazi. I'm only a part. I want to destroy the whole, take over the whole, kill the heathens, put the brown people in vans and send them to death camps. Pretty fucked, eh? But understanding looks at the whole, the logos, and uses it to relate helpfully, providentially to the parts. Same terms, different relationships as cognitive functions. And so, by playing the game in the reverse, by finding the relationships between terms in analogies, applying it to different terms and different sets, you're learning. You're also reverting upon the source. Reversion, returning back to the source. Through likeness, you're becoming like, but not in an unfolding way, but in a reverting way. Okay. So, Right, so you can apply this to tribal gods and Jesus's What Jesus says his role was, what he thought his role was, to remove tribal gods, which are again in division, and have one that personifies the quest to know the self, which is understanding. Through understanding the parables, can you have a state of mind that we will call heaven and go beyond it to the source even of that state of mind, the kingdom of God. Again, not literal, parables. And what do you have to do? Solve them. You can read that in Mark and the Gnostic Gospels. Not Paul, who fucked everything up by saying, hey, screw Jesus. Jesus can go to hell and die. Have faith. Yes, just have blind obedience. Be ignorant of the dialectic you're living out. Be ignorant of the analogy that you're applying from childhood. Never question your mummy and daddy. Never question dear leader. And kill those people we tell you to kill. Fuck Paul. Paul can fuck right off. Modern Christians are Pauline Jews. Also John. John jumped in support of Paul. Mark tried to show how stupid Paul was. And of course, the Gnostic Gospels that we found in the 60s in Egypt paint a very different story. Maybe that's why the assholes I shouldn't say assholes serve an important function. The terrible sadistic jerks who founded the Christian church burnt those books. They needed belief-based. And by the way, easy to see the implications in our world. Why do MAGA people vote for the billionaires that are taking away, that make them suffer? Why do MAGA people hate thinkers and people who like to use their mind? Because they've got a mind too. Why don't MAGA people reason and think? Why don't the Zionistic Jews in Israel think that this actually won't be a good idea to murder children? It won't make them safe? Why don't they question the dear leader? Why has Putin done this? I mean, why has Netanyahu done this? Could it be to save his own ass? Why is belief? That's why Netanyahu tried to appeal to religion. That's why Trump appeals to religion. Belief. You've already been taught to hate your own fucking mind, which is disgusting. Don't hate your own mind. Use it properly. Get understanding in your ass. So, tribal gods create division. Have a god that personifies understanding. And Socrates says, right, I also did that to laws. Why? Because society can defend their primary beliefs through laws, or the opposite. What would be the excellence and true justice of laws? See, analogy, same thing. Purification of beliefs, perfection of understanding applied to different sets. Same relationships, different terms. The terms are now gods. The terms are now laws. The terms are now you pick. That's extending the analogy. What else can you put in that list? Here we go. Here's another two. Athens and Jerusalem. Which personifies understanding? Which personifies belief? The Dark Ages, which criminalized thinking and philosophy, caused an end to culture, whereas in the Greek Golden Age, philosophy played more of a central role, and there was a flowering of culture. So you want good things, philosophy and understanding. You want bad things, belief, ignorance, fascism. For you, for your soul, and for society. Just that easy. And by the way, this isn't a secret anymore. Even though you might have been taught growing up, never talk about religion and politics at the table. No, it's the opposite. Only talk about religion and politics, because they're the only professions where you've been told it's all about beliefs. One of the reasons why you don't like talking about it is because people are take that as an opportunity to become sadistic fucks, loyal to their beliefs. Well, I don't like immigrants. That's not politics. Politics is an understanding of how to benefit the souls of everyone in harmony with all life. That's what it is. Like medicine, if you can't say, well, I'm a doctor, but I don't want to heal brown people, you're not a fucking doctor. You're a sadist. You're a sadist. You don't want to apply medicine to certain people. That's sadistic. You want them to suffer and die. That's fucking sadistic. That's not politics. Religion. Well, I believe in Jeebus. I believe in Muhammad. I believe in. That's not spirituality. That's belief. That's ignorance. That's again sadism. We are the chosen people. Fuck you. What about the people next door? Oh, they can go to hell. Fuck you, you sadist. We need to realize that we are supposed to talk about politics and spirituality. The issue is the conversation has to be like the conversation of anything else. When you talk about anything else that's allowed to be talked about at the dinner table, let's say you want to talk about how to fix your engine, and someone sits at the table and says, I believe we should pour water into the petrol tank. That will save money on fuel. No. You have a conversation about this. That's a belief that you got from somewhere. You have to remove that belief. Drop it, because it's false. And you will talk to them, dialectic, not to debate them. Well, it's your opinion that water goes in the gas tank, and it's my opinion that it shouldn't. Let's have a debate. Fuck off. That you never do that. That's not a thing that happens. You only debate subjects that we've been brainwashed into treating like children. Politics and spirituality. That's the realm of debate. You don't debate whether or not you put water in your gas tank. You have a conversation, ideally through a structured set of questions and reasoning leading to a predefined conclusion. That's the dialectic. You have to sacrifice your false belief that water goes in the gas tank to save money, and you have to understand why you can't put water in your gas tank, you idiot. Same thing for politics and religion. But it's the people in charge have fucked with us by saying, oh no, you can be sadists while we steal everything. You can be sadists while we own everything and take all the money and do all the horrible things we want to do. Yes. You can pretend to be a knower. You can be a master mechanic with just beliefs and opinions and feelings. You can't. Imagine a mechanic saying, yes, you're all just as good as a mechanic as everyone else. By the way, I'm going to steal all the cars. Yeah, have all these conversations about what should be done with cars while you can't ever get to drive because I've stolen everything. That's politics and religion. We need to realize that we need to remove false beliefs and develop an understanding. Always. And if we don't, we are becoming ignorant sheep, allowing ourselves to be fleeced by the politicians and religious leaders. It's always has been this way. It always will be this way on any planet in any time. That's what understanding does. It gives you things that are universal. So, no secret teachings, or the secret teaching of understanding that opens your mind to illumination and to go beyond that to reach a dimension of reality called the self. That is the cause and source of all things. Oh, that's secret because grandpa wants to have his beliefs that women are less. Or uncle wants to have his racist beliefs. Or Aunt Betty wants to believe in Jesus and thinks that Jesus can save her from her illness. And Mormon Joe wants to have the belief that Joseph Smith will save the world. And this guy wants to believe that we need to kill the Palestinians. And this guy wants to believe that we need to blow up the world so Jesus comes back because Paul said so. Again, a chaotic mess of ignorance, sadism, violence, and oppression that will always result if we love beliefs and don't sacrifice them for the development of understanding. And we accept the bullshit that it's secret teaching and never rock the boat and say all beliefs are wrong, even Grandpa Joe's racist beliefs. But he loves them. Don't be impolite, says the Democrats. Never challenge beliefs. Let fascists take over. The modern Democrats. And the right wing, it's just the Pathologos party, just the fascism of beliefs. Or the manipulation of beliefs to play out their own sick beliefs by manipulating the beliefs of others. Yes, Jesus wants me to take all the money, says the preacher, says Donald Trump, says Netanyahu. They don't believe in that shit, they know you do. And you're so addicted to the false idea of superiority. I am so smart and wise like mummy and daddy that they're going to play into that desire to cosplay the Noah. Say, oh yes, you are smarter than everyone because you're white. Now let's steal all the money. Oh, you are wiser than everyone because you believe in Jesus. Now let's steal all the money. They're fucking with you. They're fucking with your blind, unexamined allegiance to family clan beliefs and images of what it means to be a Noah. Always. It's always been this way. It always will be this way. And what it says here is this understanding that all problems are caused by beliefs and the manipulation of the beliefs and the lack of examining belief through understanding, and all good things, flowering of culture, good laws, good traditions are from the purification and sacrifice of beliefs and the development of understanding. That's always true, and that's not a secret tradition. It's not a secret doctrine anymore. In the past, they could make the argument for it being secret because the Christians would fucking torture and kill you. The Pope would chop off your head. The Nazis would come for you first and throw you into the death camps. We don't have time for that bullshit anymore. No more secret doctrines. We all need to share the true statement and do our best to help people reason through the steps to come to that conclusion and see it for themselves, that problems are caused by beliefs. The removal of problems is caused by understanding. And our health, justice, excellence, and harmony is caused by understanding. One is the pathologos, one is the logos. One is pseudo-excellence, the other is excellence. One causes our fate, one helps us to reach our destiny. One makes children suffer and die, one makes children happy and learning. One is in conflict, one brings unity. That's it. Just two things on the table. Tell your friends. Now, if you do tell your friends, you will have responses like the chorus. I don't like this dialogue and dialectic stuff because it leads to conclusions that I don't like. I want my beliefs. I want to be a sadist Noah. I like the feeling of superiority when I'm standing in my mummy and daddy's shoes, putting people down. I like to feel better than the blacks. I like to feel better than the Palestinians. I like to feel better than the Poors. I like to be a sadistic prick. And this dialectic stuff, I don't like the conclusions. So, yeah. And, of course, we've realized that punishment doesn't help anything. Punishment is just a lie that people will be made better and learn and solve problems through oppression, through the violence needed to oppress people. So sadists and tyrants need to justify violence to enslave and kill. How do you do that? Oh, we're not just sadistic tyrants, we're actually teaching them a lesson. Yes, we have to punish them. It's punishment. Put a person in a cage. Hang them for their crimes. There's no learning, there's no benefit, individually and as a race. And it's a tool used for oppression. And what are you learning? Only one thing, not to solve problems, but to try and get away with your ignorance and your harm. So, there can't be punishment in a just world and cosmically, therefore no such thing as hell or the devil. But the haters will say, no, I like blind belief and ignorance. Get rid of reason and understanding. And by the way, why? Because I've been told that you can't understand God. Bullshit. Who told you that? You can't understand reality. Bullshit. Who told you that? Absolutely you can. It's your fucking purpose to do it. Why? Because while you can experience the self, let's use self instead of God, while you can experience mind or reality itself as eternity, in time you develop an understanding of that. That's our job here. You are specifically supposed to be developing an understanding of those higher dimensions so that when you reach them, either in this life or after this one, if you've done your job in your higher reincarnation, you can take with you your understanding of that which you experience all at once. Understanding is the logos experience through time, while reality is all at once, and God is that which transcends it. But if you experience that which transcends all experience, or encounter that which all transcends experience, how do you know it's the self? Won't you just be like a Buddhist and say, oh, it's emptiness or nirvana? Or even a nihilist, that's even worse. Or it's all illusion, it's all samsara. Just throwing some buzzwords from other spiritual traditions that lack an understanding. That's what unifies these other spiritual traditions, no logos. And you'll miss the self. How will you recognize that this thing beyond experience is the self? And is a higher dimension and not a lower dimension? Because you've gone through the doorways of the greatest experience, bliss, beauty, justice, goodness. But hopefully you've reached there through the development of understanding. That's our job. So you can recognize, oh, I know what I'm experiencing. I'm not overwhelmed by it. I'm not afraid of it because the devil, because Christian devil, because of bullshit beliefs. But also I can recognize that through that doorway is a higher, even dimension still. And I recognize that as the self. Without the logos, how can you recognize that which is beyond qualities as the self? So, haters will say the opposite. We were told you can't know or understand things, so just believe this guy who somehow has his understanding, but from magic. Okay, they hate intellectuals because they are told to hate and fear their own mind, and they project that conflict on others. That's the projection and violence and sadism. You solve my problem. I'm going to be a prick to you and see how you solve it. No, solve your own fucking problem. Fascism, Nazism, communism, and let's add to that list, capitalism, are all at war with understanding. As we are trying to address fascism, Nazism, and communism in the negative sense, so too we need to add to that list capitalism. The fascism and Nazism for profit. Same thing. Same thing, isn't it? To extract everything from everyone else. That's capitalism. There's only one goal in life, not to know the self, not to use that knowing of the self to benefit all life and sustain our human race. Oh, no, none of that's on the paper. One thing, extract profit. Be as cruel and sadistic as you want, so long as you can steal shit from people. Disgusting. And anyone with half a brain can realize that's terrible and sick and can't work and is against humanity and life. So they are at war with understanders. People who are not blind, obedient sheep. Okay, and then that's what the chorus or the haters say, and the anti-chorus or the people who clap back with facts say, hey, you know what? Show us. Show us how punishment actually benefits the wrongdoer. Show us how the punishment actually stops him from doing the same thing over and over again. Show us. Give us one example. Show us how give us lots of more than one, of course. That's a very low fucking bar. Show us how the wrongdoer learns something from punishment. Can't. Show us how they learn anything other than trying to avoid being caught for their wrongdoing. Hey, ever notice that one of the biggest criminals is President of America so he can avoid getting caught for his crimes? Show us how punishment helped that happen. Or rather, that's the implication of punishment. Instead of blindly accepting the bullshit gods from these sadist tyrants of the past, you pick a god. Create a god. You need to review carefully what you see as necessary if the cosmos has been brought into existence from higher intelligible causes. If you are positing a higher intelligible cause, a god, show us how it's necessary. That he is irrational and harmful. Instead, create your own god or theology that reflects the ideas that are actually needed, actually good, actually real, perfection, truth, goodness, beauty, and see why the most profound of that superlatives can be assigned to that divine luminosity that we can even experience. Many people have experienced it. You can experience it given the right conditions, and show how our understanding of that is met with or happens with the highest superlative. But also you have to show for a true theology that even that has to have a cause. Cause and effect just doesn't magically stop there. So therefore, the cause of even that which is experienced and described in the highest superlatives must itself be transcendent of those superlatives. So all of those ideas are denied in a special way. It's not nihilism of the one or the good itself or the self. So in other words, the root source of beauty, the root source of perfection, goodness, truth, has to itself be transcendent and have what is needed for that reflection. Its reflection is perfect. Its reflection is beautiful in goodness and bliss and beauty and justice. Therefore, it must have that in the same way that you see your reflection in the mirror, but everything you see in 2D, you have in a much, much higher way in 3D. Your 2D reflection is a reflection of you, but it lacks your intelligence, your will, your goals, your dreams, all of those other things, the better things. So the self reflects into the highest superlatives, but has to itself have them in a higher sense. That's the issue. Otherwise, you won't realize this and realize, hang on a second, when I reach the self, which is the end goal of knowing thyself, beyond every experience, the cause of the highest superlatives, the source of every unfolding, even the source of the conditions for our distortion into our problems of these principles. Our pathologos is based on an image of beauty, image of certainty, image of knowing as certainty. But these are all unfolding into various diminishing, more distorted levels. That means, hang on a second, this isn't nothingness. This is something which has these higher superlatives more inherent in a unique kind of way. In other words, it's not just the end. It's an awakening of a whole new game. Perhaps that's something you can't explain, because all of our references of explanation, language, and experience are transcended. In other words, the greatest experience is this, whole and part together all at once. Completely unlimited or infinite, but also self-contained. So whole, part, same, different, limit, unlimited, Also, all of these descriptors, beauty, goodness, truth, justice, that's the highest experience that we can have. And our understanding is the use of those. So knowledge is the highest experience of it. The use of those terms and parts through time is the excellence of the human being, the dialectic, because we use those very qualities and descriptors in time, step by step, to solve problems, remove the false images of the self and reality, and open ourselves to experiencing it. And in the afterglow of the experience, again, similar to a loving relationship, in the afterglow of your lovemaking, after the intense experience, reflect on it with understanding to make sense of it, to integrate it into your own way of being as a model for beauty and justice, but also to reflect on it and its causes to go beyond it to the self. So, if understanding is the highest functioning in our physical world, if knowledge is the highest experience we can have, which is of the non-physical world or being, and it's the same logos, terms that are used for each, just one is in time, one is all at once, then there has to be a cause of that logos in a higher sense. Therefore, our way of either talking about it has to transcend every word we've used in understanding and every experience we've had, including divine luminosity. So in other words, the kind of logos we have access to is transcended in the experience of its cause, the self, our goal of knowing the self. But we understand why it is transcended. But also we can still see that by keeping the logos with us in our back pocket, we can still wonder, we can still understand, but it has to be used in a unique kind of a way. A better way. And that's very hard to imagine because, again, every imagination has to be based on your thinking or your experience, and it's different realm. But that's the mystery of the first hypothesis of Parmenides. Is there a new kind of a way that we can use these words and this understanding we've been developing to apply it to that which is beyond experience? Yes, the highest use of those terms can be experienced in divine luminosity, beauty itself. But in the symposium, Socrates talks about, hey, that's just the beginning. From that highest experience of beauty itself or divine luminosity, now you add your logos and understanding you've been developing all along the way with your beloved, ideally, or with friends, to develop true excellence, to go through the doorway or use beauty as the baseline to develop true excellence, which is beyond it. In other words, is there an even higher use of the logos that transcends experience? But it has to be used in a unique kind of way, different from every other experience you've had up until here, including beauty. So that's the real mystery. Of course, you can't do any of that if you're stuck in beliefs. You can't even wonder about those things if you're a Nazi, a fascist, a communist, or a religious person who is at war with even having questions. So, I mean, boo for you. This is the big one. What's the cause of even the greatest experience? How can we understand and experience the greatest experience, use the greatest experience, integrate it, and benefit ourselves, our loved ones, and everyone with the greatest experience? But also, what's the fucking cause of it? What's having that experience? What's the cause of it? What's the agent that's experiencing it? Or what's true excellence that transcends even experience? And if understanding is a reflection of eternity, of that experience, is there a higher use of the understanding that and the dialectic we've been developing that applies to a different kind of thing. That's the issue of incommensurability. It's a whole different ballgame. Like trying to explain how far you ran your marathon by talking about liters. Do you React videos? I have once or twice done React videos. Yeah. In other words, if there's a cool video, we can react to it philosophically to understand what's really going on behind the scenes, whether or not they can solve the problems that they're trying to solve, and what they would need to do to solve the problem. So we can do that. Why do you ask? So, explaining how long of a marathon you ran in liters doesn't work. It's a different thing. It's to do with meters and kilometers, or miles if you're a Yankee. That's what we call Americans. I think Americans don't use the word Yankee to refer themselves, like Australians are called Aussies. But what would be the American equivalent? Ameris? I'm American, I'm an Ameri. I'm a New Zealander, I'm a Kiwi. I'm an Australian, I'm an Aussie. Yankee kind of fits. Can send interesting philosophical vid if you want. Talk about it. What did you find interesting about it first? Sell me on how interesting it is. What did you find curious about it yourself? So, different kettle of fish, but that's the issue. While you can't take knowledge or divine luminosity with you, you can take the image of it, or the memory of it, I suppose. You can still take the logos with you because it's the logos or understanding that we can carry. That's the learning and nurture. Because we might be able to apply the logos in a different kind of a way to the self. That's our goal. To meet Socrates where he is at, with the logos and dialectic in our back pocket, but applied to a whole different ballgame. Different from anything we've ever experienced in the world of becoming or even being. Now, if you do awaken to that level, and you don't have the logos in your back pocket, you have the issue that some Buddhists may have when they experience that, and without the logos, they just call it emptiness. Is it empty? Or is it just does it transcend everything else you have experience that you use to relate to it? In other words, you might miss the self. And I say might, but they will, because we can, as we've done, we can reason through as to why the logos is required for understanding that which transcends experience. Therefore, this method that we're here and having fun with, the development of our understanding, which is the excellence in time, also applies to every spiritual realm, especially the self. Without understanding of the logos, you might encounter the self and not realize that you are there, or not know that you've had this experience, or you might be in that, even in this everyday world, you might be in that state of full openness and natural participation in self without recognizing it. Therefore, the logos is necessary, making the logos and the dialectic, this philodianoia, not just the way of being that is needed to unify mankind, it's also the paradigm for spirituality. Every other spiritual sect or division or belief or group or cult or clan is a division and a diminishment of that which is universal, the universal spiritual process, the universal yoga, the dialectic, or love of understanding, philodianoia. Everything else will take bits and pieces and push their beliefs in to make it their own, but they will always have a diminishment because they will always be in opposition to the logos, and the logos is it. And that makes sense because the logos is that which you take with you. So if all of your beliefs manifest as blocks, and the higher you get, the more your blocks will come to be, I can do this little thing easy. I'm not scared. And this thing easy. But now it gets scarier. Now it gets more meaningful. Now it gets more beautiful. I'm more likely to be blocked. The thing that will block everyone is the logos. Unless you have been going through this one spiritual art, the paradigm of spirituality and learning, the dialectic, because you can also apply that dialectical step-by-step reasoning to a conclusion using these words, whole, part, same, different, beauty, justice, to reflect on your false ideas of beauty and justice, your false ideas of the self, trace it back through your past to its origin scene, and purify yourself with the help of your dreams. Again, dialectic applied to dreams. You can purify yourself from your blocks, which is necessary to master the logos, which is why all other traditions that don't have midwifery and dream analysis to remove your false beliefs, which are the cause of your problems, will always be a diminished reflection of any spiritual tradition. And in principle, the highest or the archetype or the one spiritual tradition is the logos. The logos necessary for removing those blocks and the necessary for the development of excellence upon your highest spiritual experience, and necessary to be taken with you to its cause, the self, so you can recognize the self there and don't mistake it for emptiness or nirvana or samsara or any of those words that point to the fact that everything is illusion or not real or emptiness. So this game of Philodianoi is also the spiritual tradition. And as we pass through justice itself, there's our model for politics. If we want a just world, we better have the model of justice. If a doctor wants to make a healthy bottle, if a doctor wants to make a healthy body, he better have a model of the healthy body. So, the idea of, hey, no talk about politics or religion at the table, only talk about politics and spirituality at the table, because that's the very thing we need to apply our life energy to, so we can remove beliefs on politics and spirituality, develop understanding of those sort of things. It's the same thing, just politics is spread through society. Spirituality is when you apply it to your own experience and your own soul's development. It's the same thing. It's always the dialectic. It's always Philodianoia. The archetype of politics, the archetype of spirituality, the archetype of learning. Therefore, by definition, the one thing every living being is here to do and master. Every human being in this lifetime, but any living being who has developed language and self-reflection. Philodianoia. The art of the dialectic, the gift from Prometheus. That's where we are in the text. If I give you the title, I think it will intrigue you. Discrimination is a moral good and a moral law. That's vague. I don't get. What did you see in it? What did you find exciting about it? How did it relate to your world, your goals, and your blocks? So those are the two things we can talk about, really. Considering that our one purpose is to master the art of dialectic, to remove our problems and reach our excellence, that's only the real sort of conversation you can ever have with someone. What are you struggling with? What's your blocks? And what's your highest excellence? What have you been developing in your experience, vision, and understanding? Those are the two things. Now you can ask a third thing, hey, what dreams have you been having? Because dreams will tell you about those blocks that you might not be aware of, and will tell you about your excellence that you might not be aware of. So that's even better. It's still those same kind of two topics, but it's an even better one because we're not talking to you as who you think you are. We're talking to the real you and the mind that communicates to you through dreams. So that's really all we can ask about. What are your blocks? What are your excellences? And really, what dreams are you having about those things? And then we practice the dialectic to reflect on those things. That's it. And as we're saying, your problems will be caused by beliefs. Your excellence will be caused by understanding. The nature of understanding is the logos. Its skill and art is the dialectic. Therefore, the logos and dianoia, which is the Greek word which means understanding, following the logos, is excellence. Excellence in politics, excellence in spirituality. So it's the one spiritual thing, it's the one political thing, it's the one human thing. Therefore, it can be a one thing. It doesn't exclude anyone. There are divisions, of course. How much of your beliefs have you removed and become free from? How much of your excellence have you developed? What level of vision of being are you at? Beauty, reality, existence, bliss, justice. These are all depths of that brilliant light of being, and the self, which is even beyond that. So there are still divisions and ranks, or discrimination, as you would like, within that group, but there's no exclusion. So the moral good and the moral law would be a way of being called philodianoia, which allows for discrimination, division, leveling up, upgrades, progression, but without ever excluding and without ever hurting anyone, because there's no idea of punishment, which is a sick manifestation of sick beliefs. So no punishment, no excluding, no genocides or jails or mocking or any of that shit. Now, you can mock ignorance, and there is a very useful function for comedians to... by the way, all comedians, there is a thing happening at the moment with comedians. There've been a whole bunch of American comedians have been paid Saudi blood money to go over and whitewash the oppressive Saudi regime, which is, terrible. Slavery, did a genocide, etc., etc. And they're and according to Bill Burr, they are not allowed to talk about those same two things. Funnily enough, they were not able to criticize the government or any religion. Of fucking course, because those are the two things that are used to venerate or pedestalize or sanctify personal beliefs, which are the cause of problems and the cause of oppression and violence. Institutionalizing them, making my beliefs, it's not just I want to be in charge, God says I should be the ruler. It's not just what I think that women should be subjugated, God says so. Don't question the king, don't question the clergy. And people are not happy about these because these comedians, and they say saying it's hypocritical, but we can go one step further. Not only is it hypocritical, it's not your job. The comedian's job is specifically to make one point only. Beliefs cause problems, understanding solves them. That's the entire nature of comedy itself. You can say it in a million different ways, an infinite amount of ways, and you can use an infinite amount of examples. But the comedian's job is to make that point in a way that's entertaining, number one, engaging, and in a way where they lead step by step through a kind of dialectic to this conclusion and allowing the audience to make that conclusion for themselves. That's the punchline. The audience has to get that realization that this specific belief was fucked and causing our problems, and all we needed to do was drop it and develop understanding. You make fun of, this is Ricky Gervais, right? Ricky Gervais wasn't a stand-up comedian, and he decided, well, I want to do it. I've done a comedy show which just shows the office, that shows how miserable office life is, and I got famous, but I want to be a comedian. I'm going to do stand-up. And that's all he did. He just, okay, let's just open the Bible for children, like a children's Bible thing, and just point at it. Isn't that absurd? Isn't that absurd? Isn't that absurd? That's it. That's what all comedy is. The better comedians point to more profound or more pervasive beliefs that are more common in individuals or more representative of society and have more of an impact, and they might be more entertaining and the punchline might be a greater twist, but it's always the same thing. That's your job as a comedian. It's also your job as any artist. Any artist, pick doctor. You have this belief that your problems will be solved through alcoholism. Here is an understanding of why it's not the case. Now, you'd have to say, well, hang on a second. Don't doctors just treat the body? Yes. But in the Hellenic age, no medical doctor would see you without talking to you first about your dreams, because the physical manifestations, or how you act and function in the physical world, is a direct result of your psyche. What thinking you're doing. This is why the idea that, I think religion is fine so long as people never think through their beliefs and function through their beliefs and treat others through their beliefs and establish laws through their beliefs and raise their children through their beliefs and teach schools through their beliefs. In other words, I like beliefs as long as they're not beliefs. You always function through your beliefs and thinking. That's why this fucking democratic, it's all relative, let's be little bitches and let the fascists take over thing set the stage for Trump's fascism. Grow up. Every belief is bad. Why? Because you do think through your beliefs. You do treat others. Yes, the Jewish people do believe they are the chosen people and do feel like God wants them to kill people who are against them and are supporting the genocide and are doing a fucking genocide. Oh, but some Jewish beliefs are good. No beliefs are good. Some Christian beliefs are, I like the ones that say you can't be gay. I like the ones that say women should not speak up. Fuck off. You do function through your beliefs. So anyone who says, I'm okay with beliefs so long as no one functions through them in any way, you're fundamentally misunderstanding what a belief is. A belief is a state of soul, a state of mind or psyche, through which you function. It's a shit one. It's the cause of our problems. Understanding is the good one. That's why if you ever come across these philosophers who say, well, I'm actually trying to make it so that the Jews actually think that what the Platonics say, and also the Muslims, and also this cult, the Heaven's Gate cult, and also the Scientologists. Yes, we're all saying the same thing. Fuck off, you're not. You are still stuck in a childhood role of keeping the peace between your parents. You don't want your parents fighting, so you're trying to pretend everyone is right when you're not discriminating, to call back to Brunson and chat, between right and wrong, true and false. I think maybe the moldy sandwich is a good sandwich as well as the healthy sandwich. Let's not make distinctions. That's that fifth class of cognitive functioning called a mass of difference. There is no standard, there is no whole, everything is relative, there are no universal statements. That's the fifth class, modern Democrats. Maybe beliefs are good sometimes. Then you have the fourth one who actually have a standard. It's a shit standard. My beliefs are right. There is a standard. It's Jesus wants me to be in charge, or Muhammad wants me to be in charge, or I get to oppress women, or I get to kill the Palestinians, or I get to have all the money. It's fascistic. Belief is fascistic and sadistic in principle, but at least they have a standard. That's why no one voted for Kamala Harris and people voted for Trump. He was a fucking fascist, but at least he was something. And of course, when you leave belief, you have to move upward into understanding so you can actually have a true paradigm of justice and beauty. You function through your thinking. So that's the, and by the way, almost no one will listen to me say that. That's why we have comedians. Ain't no one paying to see me, say this. It's true. It will help everyone. It needs to be said. The more people hearing it, the better. But ain't no one listening to me say that. Well, that's not fair. There are people, and I very much appreciate the people in the Discord and the people who watch live. Often they don't comment. People watch the vlogs, and some people even watch on YouTube. And I'm very, very appreciative of that, and it's very important as well. It's really good. But I recognize I'm not fucking Bill Burr. There is an art to presenting that as a puzzle in a funny way, using analogies, mythology, not literal things that happen. Create a story. They'll draw from their similar experience. So they might tell stories about their parents and their childhood friends. Or they might even talk about cultural mythology. They'll talk about Spider-Man. Hey, isn't it weird that Spider-Man is, I don't know. I can't think of a funny thing about Spider-Man. Hey, why does Spider-Man always something? Sorry, terrible example. Why does Superman wear his underpants outside of his tights? There you go. That's a funny joke.
I'm too pure.
So, again, analogy. We're learning how to use analogy here, but the use of analogy as a myth to give examples or even mythologize examples to lead people to their own conclusion, that's the dialectic, and that's stand-up comedy. It's always just the one point: belief bad, understanding good. And we've found a million different ways of talking about it in this text. Beliefs cause you to be a zombie. Why? Because it's a psychic parasite, stripping away your energy. Why else? Because it limits your functioning of logos. You can only say a few catchphrases. That's why the fascists appeal to them. That's why Fox News keeps repeating the same: immigrants bad, Antifa bad. Limited use of intelligence and logos. Zombies say, eat brains. That's all they say. Limited amount of self-reflection, enough to sustain their pathologos false beliefs. And so zombies, limited amount of functioning, enough to walk around and eat brains, but nothing else. So zombies are the cause of personified belief. Human beings personify understanding. Or savages, loyal to their clan beliefs. Sages develop understanding to help them and others and reach spiritual excellence. So, zombies and humans, savages and sages, belief and understanding, pseudo-excellence and excellence, fate and our highest purpose, destiny. What else we got on the two sides of the game? Pathologos, logos. In other words, there are a million ways of saying it, using examples to make it relevant in an entertaining way with a good personality, with an interesting personality, and leading people to the punchline themselves. That's the art of stand-up comedy. Or just comedy itself. So yeah, you can mock beliefs or mock people stuck in beliefs as a message to help everyone realize the absurdity of beliefs and the necessity for understanding. But that's the art, that's the job. So to Bill Burr, who is saying, oh, everyone's hating me for taking blood money, but, you know, I played gigs in England. Aren't they like fascistic as well, and have slavery as well, and oppress the world as well, and have a royal family as well, and manipulate people through religion as well? You guys are fucking hypocrites. True. And aren't I from America? Aren't we like the absolute worst tyrants, mass murderers, inflictors of genocide in the world? Yeah? But that's not the issue, Bill. The issue is you can't do your job. Your job is specifically to point to the fact belief bad, understanding good. Always, forever. And apply it to what's most relevant. What's the most relevant application or sanctification of beliefs to harm human beings? Religion and politics, kings and clergy. So for the Saudi government to say, hey, you can't talk about any religion or talk about our politics or royal family means you are not doing your job. You are lying about comedy to give the imitation of comedy, or rather, what you are saying is a lie. By implication, if the comedian's job is to talk about what's most pressing and relevant in our world, to make the case, belief bad, understanding good, for everyone to see and laugh at the absurdity, to enliven people so we can actually make the change and help everyone and save our planet from extinction, then you not talking about this thing and talking about Starbucks and Burger King instead implies you've already addressed the big issue. It implies there is no problem with religion. There is no problem with politics. By omission, you are saying there isn't a problem with these things because look at me doing a Jerry Seinfeld fucking routine about how toothpaste is funny. Or Pop-Tarts are weird. You're being paid to lie. It's a lie through omission, but it's a lie. And you're not doing your job. So that's the issue with Bill Burr. And so there's my React video clip. So just take, there've been like hundreds of, like, I'll pull up my feed. Hundreds of like YouTube videos. I got one from Too Lazy to Try. I got one from The Cavernacle. Got one from, more than one from, who else do we have on my feed? The Vanguard. There are a couple of young lads who are starting their thing up. Secular Talk with Kyle Klawinski. He's got a bunch on them. There are hundreds of these videos on YouTube talking about Bill Burr crashing out or the controversy about the Saudi comedy thing. That's my react. Pick any one of them and put that whole section of me ranting in the bottom corner of that video. And in fact, have like 50 of them in like 50 little windows across the top. And then have me doing that speech, and that's my reaction to them for our friend in chat who wanted a react video. So, fascism, Nazism, communism, capitalism are all against understanding. Of course they are. They are the source of oppression, violence, and suffering, and the perpetration of ignorance through belief. Yep, and punishment never helps the wrongdoer, never helps anyone to learn, doesn't affix the causes of problems, so society doesn't learn shit, but also all you learn is to avoid punishment, to keep doing the bad thing, but not get caught. Instead, we need to have a God based around realizing that it's a theology, which is not literal, it's a metaphorical representation of these principles, but make sure they represent these actual principles to help us understand and remember the principles of divine light of being, so that in one way, so that if you are ever experiencing divine luminosity of ultimate reality, knowing your soul or mind as eternity, you've got a nice theology in your back pocket. You got all these stories about beauty and goodness and truth, but represented by Aphrodite and Hermes and Apollo and Demeter. In other words, it's a mnemonic device. So that when you're in the experience, you go, oh, I remember that story about how Apollo and Aphrodite are together. Reason and beauty. So I'm experienced beauty. Maybe there's reason here. And of course, you have to also make sure that the ultimate is transcends in a unique way, not rejecting all of those highest superlatives, but transcends them and causes them. That's the self. And that's what God should be. And if you're not doing that, then all of your basic ideas are hollow and empty of meaning. So if it doesn't account for understanding, which is the use of the principle. So if it doesn't explain the divine luminosity, then you've got no spirituality. If it doesn't take the parts of that luminosity and structure it through time to benefit human souls, you've got no dialectic, you've got no understanding. And if you don't put the two of them together to understand that divine luminosity and realize it has to have a transcendent cause, then you don't have the self. If you don't have the self, mind, and understanding, you are, I don't know, full of hot air? What would you say? Talking rubbish? Your ideas are empty and hollow of meaning. But doesn't matter, because unless you've done philosophical midwifery on the origin of those false beliefs, you will still, even though you've been reasoned to this, don't worry, haters. Don't worry about seeing that your basic ideas are hollow and empty of meaning. You will still believe what has convinced you it was true anyway. There was some imitation of beauty, goodness, and truth in your childhood from your parents or parental surrogates that you still believe and will continue to believe until you go back and address the scene of the crime, the scene of your root injustice, the root cause of your anger, the root cause of your projection of others and being a dick to others, your sadism, your ignorance, your blindness from the truth. You will still believe that unless you go back and address the crime scene. In other words, dialectic is also needed to solve problems. That's why philosophical midwifery is the moral good, to quote our friend in the chat. We have a moral imperative to learn the dialectic, apply it through philosophical midwifery and dream analysis to find the root cause, the root analogy behind our own ignorance and suffering that we direct towards ourselves, causing that internal conflict, project on others, causing external conflict, and will put an end to all life on this planet if we don't do it. Therefore, a universal, true, moral good for everyone. So, dialectic again. Understanding wins. We always be winning.
It's a win-win-win-win-win.
Because they'll still, even though you, through reason and reflection, you'll see that your basic ideas, if they do not use the logos to describe knowing or mind, they do not structure the logos through time in the dialectic for understanding, and they do not apply the two together to realize that the self is transcendent but incorporates the logos in a unique way, then your ideas are empty and full of hollow and empty of meaning. You will still believe it anyway, because
the problem is that you can't
reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into. Bless you. Excuse you.
Bless you.
Because you can't.
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position
that they didn't reason themselves into.
You can't reason yourself.
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
You can't reason yourself out of that position because you didn't reason yourself into. You were in a scene where reason was blocked. You didn't reason about what was happening. You took the appearance of things that reflect the principles of reason, beauty, justice, goodness, and you took it as true. That becomes your model of knowing. And of course, as belief was crushing you then, so too do you crush others. You will spend your life doing to yourself and doing unto others the same injustice you suffered, while being angry the whole time and while still feeling like you're the victim. That's the human condition. That's the zombie. That's why Trump and the fascists are always like, why are you speaking up against me? We're little capitalists. We're little billionaires. Don't be mean. I'm the president. Why is someone being mean to me? While they murder people and take away healthcare and starve children and murder children. Yes. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's not rational. Beliefs are not rational. That's why this, beliefs are fine so long as you don't act through it, doesn't make any fucking sense. Everyone acts through their beliefs. That's what it is. You suffered an injustice. That causes anger within your soul. You either learn the dialectic to address that, to free yourself from those fetters and chains, or you remain angry, you project the anger on other people, You imagine they're doing to you what you suffered as a child, and your response is the same treatment of knowing that your parents did to you. In other words, you believe people are being your parental injustice, and you respond with that same parental injustice. That's why every accusation is a confession for the right-wing movement. You're doing this bad thing. No, they're doing it. And I'm going to treat you in that very bad way. Huh. I don't like you calling me a Nazi, so I'm going to do a Nazi thing to you. That's the issue. You are doing the thing. You're calling the left, the left are the Nazis. And your response to them is to do Nazi shit to them. It's a closed loop. You suffered an injustice from your parents, took it as real. You either challenge them or you still carry it as that analogy, project it onto the world as real. Or everyone else is doing the Nazi stuff. The Antifa, the anti-fascists are the real fascists, says the right wing. I'm angry and I feel like the victim, even though I have all of the power. Republicans have all the political power and the money. Fascists do. That's capitalism, by the way. That's why capitalism is a problem. And I'm going to respond by doing Nazi shit to you. Do unto others the injustice you suffered is the nature of the zombie virus. That's why the comedian's job, Bill Burr, is to point that out. Isn't it absurd? How they're doing the Nazi thing. Anyone who speaks out, they call a Nazi. And in response to their projection of their own problems, they respond with more Nazi shit. Isn't that absurd, Bill Burr? Then say it. Say it in a funny way. That's your job. That's your art. That's your purpose for being here. That's your contribution to humanity. And in doing so, you have to learn the dialectic of your very art, which is your purpose as a soul. It is absurd. The hypocrisy, the projection, the irony of it. Comedian's job is to say that. That's why not talking about politics or religion is antithetical to your whole reason for being, Bill Burr. And all the other comedians as well, but I think Bill Burr is the one that we can get through to. Because he's developed a love of understanding and a care for people more than the other ones. Who are, was it black-pilled, red-pilled, Joe Rogan universe? They think that comedy is being fascist, which is fucked. And there are people like Mark Maron and, who's that guy? There's a bunch of people who've spoken out. I can't remember their names. Right, so David Cross, of course, was the guy I was thinking of. He publicly spoke out against it. I don't, just turn my lights up a little bit. Mark Maron, and Zach Woods, who you might know from the American version of The Office. So these comedians did speak out against it. So, tell them that's their job as well, because I'm a musician. My job is to communicate that through music, and I'm working on it. But yeah, it's their job. They are already popular. They've already got good at their art. Those people I mentioned and Bill Burr. So it's their job to share this. But as a philosopher, my job is to say it, because as we saw here, the last thing that we said, there is no need for an esoteric tradition. So I've spent a long time learning this from people like this author. So it's my job to say it, and anyone listening, it's your job to communicate it to a greater audience through your art. Or maybe you're friends with these comedians who are really good at their art and say, hey, by the way, did you know that your job was to Make this one point: belief bad, understanding good, using relevant examples with the greatest scope. So in particular, politics and spirit and religion. And by the way, the structure of that is the dialectic. So your job is also to learn the art of the dialectic. And in your funny examples, you're mastering analogy. So dialectic and analogy is the use of the logos that you're here to do in spiritual process. That's what you're here as a soul to develop. That can solve your own problems of your own false beliefs, but also can help humanity. Tell them that in an Instagram DM or something, or Twitter, because I don't have the art of comedy. I can understand it, but I don't have it as an art. But it's okay, I'm telling you and you will tell them. So the anti-chorus says, hey, get rid of your belief-based gods that sanctify beliefs. Develop one that has understanding. Make sure you understand the highest experience we can have, which is the nature of eternity, which is always eternal. It's the cause of our physical world. So make sure you have gods that personify perfection, truth, goodness, and beauty, which is our understanding of that. Make sure you have a god that personifies the dialectic so you can get to it through understanding. That's Hermes. But also make sure that you have in your understanding that the first cause, or the highest god, what we might call Zeus, transcends even that. So those fundamental ideas are denied of it, but not the logos. Because it has to be the source of those ideas and the source of understanding. Maybe you can understand it. That's the biggest question we're here to solve. So that's where we ended. That's where we're up to. And then Jesus goes on to say, interesting that we have moved from punishment to the idea of reincarnation. And then Socrates comes in by talking about, yes, after we die, the after-death experience, we will all encounter that divine luminosity of being. It's overwhelming in its profound beauty. So the significance of having an understanding of that and a theology to remember it is, if you are guaranteed to experience it, don't be overwhelmed with it, and have your mythology and understanding in your back pocket so you can recognize it. Smile as you go through it. Recognize it. You can't smile without that understanding. If you saw a football game, an American football game, and you have no understanding, you wouldn't be smiling. You'd be like, what the fuck is happening? Or bored. But if you can see what's going on, and the greater you understand, you can smile at more and more happening. Oh, I know why the quarterback gave that look. Oh, I know what's happening. See? Same thing with this luminosity experience. And we all get it. It's real beyond anything else, and seeing directly that this is no different from pure mind itself. You have a mind even here. Don't you want to know what it is? Don't you want to know the highest reach of it? Again, this is the significance of a theology that represents the understanding of that luminosity, which we call metaphysics. True metaphysics is nothing other than the understanding of that divine luminosity, and realizing that its source is beyond that realm. So you get to experience it. It's no different than mind itself. It's radiating a goodness that brings an awe-inspiring presence to all. So that's also the functioning of that. Not only can you prepare yourself for the experience, smile as you go through it beyond it, but it's the source of goodness. Don't you want to be a good person? Don't you want to help people you care about? That's the source. The greater you can participate in that, the greater you have an understanding of what goodness is. Hey, do you think you're being good if you direct people to belief? I'm making people Mormon, I'm helping. I'm going to foreign countries and making them read the Bible. Fuck off. That's not good. Goodness is to lead them into this experience of goodness itself. So if you want to be a good person, the importance of that metaphysics and a theology that is a personification of that metaphysics, so you can be a good person. Also, you can't really help anyone develop the dialectic understanding, Apollo, reason, to experience beauty, Aphrodite, and master the dialectic which uses both, unless you're inspiring people. So again, the more you can participate in your own source of intelligence, mind itself, the more you can A, become rational, B, benefit people, and C, inspire others to get into the game as well. That's the significance of dropping our false laws, religion, and fundamental beliefs, and developing a theology representing metaphysics, laws that reflect the logos and the cosmos, the laws of the cosmos, the logos, and understanding itself, the dialectic. And you will experience it when you die. So again, your purpose here is to prepare for it so you can smile through it and go beyond. And not be identified with any other self-mask that will cause a negative reincarnation and prevent your participation in that most profound and overwhelming, potentially, experience. So yeah, seek beautiful goals. As you can be overwhelmed by the presence of a beautiful person, practice staying in there so that when you experience beauty itself, you have practiced. Again, if you are lucky enough to find someone profoundly beautiful, radiating this goodness and beauty of mind itself, you can develop the stages of learning with them. That's the symposium. Love and logos together. So doesn't have to be a loving relationship, in your midwifery relationships or your philosophical relationships, as you develop through higher and higher states of being and understanding, but also intimate relationships, loving relationships. Because if you're going to experience beauty itself, you don't want to be overwhelmed by the profound. You want to be able to not carry anything of yourself that tells yourself you are not good enough or different or inadequate from beauty itself, so that you don't become overwhelmed by it. You recognize it as your own nature. You smile through it with the understanding you've been developing, and even go through those doorways to true excellence, the self, and be truly immortal and friend of the gods as any man can be, to quote Socrates, as the result of not this beauty, this is the beginning of true excellence. Beyond it. We all experience it when we die. Let's see if we can go through it properly. So that's where we are. Next time, we're going to go on from here to further look at the nature of life and death and logos and beauty and truth, all of the good things. But yeah, I think it's about time to call it for this episode. Lots of good reflection. We had our friend in chat saying, hey, do you want to do a react video? We did one on the comedians, but without the video. Good stuff. Good stuff. Again, 1 point. From belief to understanding. Through analogy and the dialectic. Ideally leading people to the punchline themselves. So they're not just believing you. They're understanding it for themselves. And that goes all the way through to divine luminosity, which you can understand and personify the aspects through an actual theology, so that when you experience it, either in this life or at the end of this life, you recognize it, you understand it, you smile when you go through it, you're not overwhelmed by it, you're not identified with any image of the self that tells you you're not good enough, because that's bullshit and not true. You've purified yourself through the dialectic to go smile your way through that divine luminosity, recognizing it as you go through it, and through the doorways to the self, which is beyond even that experience, but is still understandable in a unique kind of a way, and recognize, oh, this, my friend, is the self. Thanks for joining me. You can follow along on Twitch and on YouTube, and our past episodes are on YouTube. You can join the Discord, share your work and your insights and your puzzles with your friends on Discord. If you want to contribute to the channel, I very much appreciate it. There's a link below where you can donate, and I will see you all in the next, you guessed it, one. And now I press the button. Go. See you in the next one. Bye.